Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Learn English with Podcast Conversation. I'm Jennifer, and today we're going to talk about something really important for anyone looking to improve their English fluency: how to think in English instead of translating from your native language.
That's right. A lot of learners struggle with this because they're constantly translating in their heads from their first language into English. But the more you practice thinking in English, the quicker and more naturally you'll be able to communicate. This is key for improving fluency, especially in real conversations.
Exactly, Thomas. It's all about training your brain. When you rely on translating in your head, it slows you down and can make your responses feel more forced. But when you start thinking directly in English, your communication becomes more fluid, and you're able to respond more quickly and naturally.
Let's start with one simple tip to get you started. Immerse yourself in English as much as possible. This doesn't just mean listening to English music or watching English TV shows, but really surrounding yourself with the language in your daily life. For example, try labeling objects in your house with their English names. This helps your brain associate the words with the items directly in English rather than in your native language.
That's a great tip, Thomas. Another method is to practice speaking to yourself in English. It might sound a little strange at first, but it's really effective. Try talking to yourself about your day or what you plan to do next all in English. This helps your brain get used to thinking in English for everyday situations. You can start small, like describing your breakfast or what you see around you.
Absolutely, Jennifer, and here's something else to try. If you don't know a word in English, don't immediately think of the translation in your native language. Instead, try to describe the word or concept in English. For instance, if you don't know the word refrigerator, try saying it's the appliance where you keep your food cold. The more you practice this, the more you'll develop your ability to think in English.
Yes, and that's such a great point, Thomas. When you start describing things in English, you build your vocabulary and also learn to think around the words you don't know. This is a really important part of fluency, being able to communicate without always needing the exact word.
Another useful technique is to practice shadowing. Shadowing means listening to a native English speaker and repeating what they say immediately after they say it. This helps train your brain to process English in real time, and you won't have time to translate because you're focusing on the conversation. You can use podcasts, YouTube videos, or even movies for this practice.
That's a fantastic method, Thomas. And don't forget to set aside time to practice with a conversation partner. It could be a friend, a tutor, or even a language exchange partner. Speaking with someone else forces you to think in the moment, and that's one of the best ways to improve your natural communication in English. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. It's part of the learning process.
Exactly, and it's also helpful to think in phrases, not just individual words. For example, if you're learning to talk about the weather, you can practice phrases like "it's sunny today" or "it looks like it's going to rain." Thinking in these ready-made phrases can help you speak more naturally and faster because you're not having to form each sentence from scratch.
Right, Thomas. The more you practice thinking in English, the faster and easier it will become. It might take a little time at first, but the results are definitely worth it. By immersing yourself in English and using these strategies, you'll start thinking in English without even realizing it.
So, start small and be patient with yourself. Remember, the more you practice, the easier it will get. Try to make thinking in English a part of your daily routine, and soon enough, it will become second nature. Just keep at it and don't give up.
Now that we've covered some tips to help you think in English, let's talk about the importance of being patient with yourself during this process. When you start shifting from translating to thinking directly in English, it can feel difficult at first, and that's perfectly okay. It's important not to be frustrated if it doesn't happen overnight.
Absolutely. Jennifer, it's like learning any new skill. You don't expect to run a marathon the first time you put on your running shoes. In the same way, thinking in English takes time and practice. If you have to translate occasionally, that's all right, just keep working on improving over time.
Right, Thomas. And don't forget that even small improvements count. One day, you might realize you've gone an entire conversation without needing to translate, and that's a huge accomplishment. The key is consistent practice and surrounding yourself with English as much as you can.
Exactly, and remember, it's not just about thinking in English during conversations. It's about applying it to all areas of your life. When you're at the grocery store, try thinking in English about what you're buying. When you're out for a walk, describe the things you see around you in English. These everyday moments are opportunities to practice and develop your thinking skills.
That's such a great point, Thomas. The more you integrate English into your daily activities, the easier it becomes to think in the language. Over time, you'll find that it's no longer a conscious effort. It will simply become the way you process information.
Another helpful tip is to expose yourself to various types of English content. Try reading books, listening to podcasts, or watching shows with different accents, voices, and topics. This variety helps train your mind to think in English in different contexts and situations, not just in one specific style.
Yes, I love that idea. The more variety you have in what you listen to and read, the more adaptable your thinking in English will become. It will also make you more comfortable with different expressions, slang, and even idioms.
That's a great point, Jennifer. One thing to keep in mind is that thinking in English doesn't mean you need to abandon your native language completely. It's not about completely removing your first language, but rather learning to use both languages in a more fluid way. Being bilingual or multilingual is a skill, and the goal is to make English as natural as possible in your everyday thoughts.
Exactly. It's all about balance. The more you practice thinking in English, the less you'll need to rely on translation, but you can still use your native language as a support tool when necessary. The goal is to make English feel like a natural part of your thought process, and that takes time.
And don't forget to celebrate the small wins along the way. If you catch yourself thinking in English, even for just a few minutes a day, take a moment to feel proud of your progress. Every step you take moves you closer to thinking in English more naturally and confidently.
That's such a great reminder, Thomas. Keep practicing, and over time, you'll notice how much easier it becomes. The key is to keep going, stay patient, and most importantly, enjoy the process of learning.
And let's not forget the power of immersion. One way to really strengthen your ability to think in English is to immerse yourself in environments where English is constantly being used. Whether it's online communities, watching movies without subtitles, or engaging in conversations with native speakers, the more you surround yourself with English, the more your brain will adapt.
Yes, immersion is one of the most effective ways to accelerate learning. Even when you're not actively studying, just hearing and being surrounded by English throughout your day helps your mind make the connection to thinking in the language. So even when you're just doing something like cooking or cleaning, try listening to an English podcast or an audiobook. It becomes background knowledge that your brain absorbs without even thinking about it.
That's a great point. It's like how children learn their first language. They don't sit down to study grammar rules or vocabulary. They simply hear the language around them constantly. So, if you can create an environment like that for yourself, your brain will gradually start picking up on phrases, expressions, and grammar rules naturally.
Exactly, and this ties into the idea of not being too hard on yourself. You don't need to understand every single word or sentence immediately. Just by hearing the language, you start to build a connection, and eventually, you'll be able to understand the meaning without having to translate. That's when it becomes more natural.
Yes, and the beauty of English is that there are many resources available to help you do this. You can find content on YouTube, podcasts, social media, and even books that suit your level and interests. This variety will expose you to real-life English that's both authentic and practical.
Another helpful exercise to think in English is journaling. It doesn't have to be anything fancy or long, just a few sentences every day about your day or thoughts in English. Writing regularly allows you to practice constructing thoughts directly in the language without the need for translation.
That's a great suggestion, Jennifer. Journaling also helps you identify areas where you might still rely on translation and can work on them. Plus, it's a great way to track your progress and see how much you've improved over time. You'll also be able to recognize patterns in your thinking, which can guide your learning process.
Right, and there's no need to worry about making mistakes while journaling. The goal isn't perfection, but practicing how to express yourself directly in English. So don't be afraid to make errors. They're part of the learning process. The important thing is to keep practicing and pushing yourself to think in English.
Absolutely. Mistakes are just opportunities to learn and grow. And every time you push through a moment of discomfort, your ability to think in English improves. Eventually, you'll reach a point where it feels more automatic, and you'll be able to think in English effortlessly.
And remember, thinking in English isn't just about learning the language. It's about changing your mindset. You're training your brain to operate in a new way, and that's a process that takes time, consistency, and patience. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes.
That's such an important reminder, Jennifer. Shifting your mindset is one of the most important steps in learning a new language. The sooner you start thinking in English, the sooner you'll feel confident in your ability to communicate effectively. Keep practicing, and remember, every little bit helps.
Exactly, and if you keep working at it, thinking in English will become second nature. Stay consistent with your practice, and soon you'll notice a huge difference in how naturally you communicate.
Another thing that can help you think in English more naturally is having conversations with others. The real-time pressure of trying to keep up with someone in English forces you to process the language faster, and that can really speed up your ability to think in English. It doesn't have to be with a native speaker. Practicing with anyone at any level can help.
Exactly, Thomas. And don't worry about speaking perfectly either. The more you engage in these real conversations, the easier it becomes to access the language. The goal is communication, not perfection. And by doing this regularly, you'll slowly build the skill to think in English during everyday situations, without even thinking about it.
Right, and another great tip is to try to talk to yourself in English. Sounds a bit funny, but you can practice talking about things you're doing or thinking throughout the day. Whether it's mentally narrating your actions or speaking out loud in your mind, this helps strengthen the habit of thinking in English. It's like you're practicing without any pressure.
I love that, Thomas. I do that all the time when I'm on my own. Even if you're just doing simple things, narrating them in English helps make that connection between your thoughts and the language. It's a great way to make English a natural part of your day.
Absolutely, and another thing to consider is limiting your use of your native language when possible. The less you rely on translation, the more your brain will get used to thinking in English. It might be challenging at first, but the more you try, the more natural it will feel. You can start small, like trying to think of the English word for something instead of translating it, and gradually increase your practice.
That's so true. The less you depend on translation, the faster you'll start thinking directly in English. The brain works better when it's not constantly switching between languages. By pushing yourself to think in English, you're training your mind to use the language automatically, just like a native speaker.
Yes, and with all of this, consistency is key. You won't see immediate results, but with regular practice, thinking in English will slowly become more natural. It's like any new skill, you have to put in the effort before you see real progress.
That's a great point, and don't forget to celebrate your small wins. Every time you notice yourself thinking in English, even for a few seconds, that's progress. Keep practicing, stay patient with yourself, and remember that the more you do it, the more natural it will feel. Eventually, English will become the first language you think in.
Exactly, and we hope these tips will help you on your journey to thinking in English. Stay consistent, embrace the process, and you'll be amazed at how much progress you can make over time. Keep practicing, and before you know it, you'll be thinking in English without even realizing it.
Another strategy that can help you think in English is by immersing yourself in English content. Watch movies, listen to podcasts, or read books in English as much as possible. The more you surround yourself with the language, the more your brain will start processing English automatically. Try to listen actively and pay attention to how native speakers use language in different situations.
Yes, immersing yourself in content is an excellent way to expose your brain to new vocabulary, phrases, and sentence structures. The goal is to get to the point where you're not actively thinking about the translation, but instead you're simply understanding and reacting to what you hear or read in English.
Another way to make English more natural is by practicing thinking in English for different situations. For example, when you're shopping, try to imagine yourself having a conversation in English with the cashier. Or when you're cooking, think about the recipe in English or explain the steps to someone in English. This helps put the language into context and makes it more accessible in daily life.
Exactly, Jennifer. It's all about shifting your mindset to see English as a tool you can use to navigate the world around you. By practicing these small activities, you're training your brain to think in English so that over time it becomes second nature. Even when you're just walking down the street or relaxing at home, try to think in English as much as possible. The more you do it, the more effortless it will become.
And don't forget about the importance of making mistakes. It's actually part of the learning process. Don't be afraid to make errors as you try to think in English. Every mistake is an opportunity to learn and improve. Remember, the more you practice, the fewer mistakes you'll make in the future.
Absolutely. Mistakes are a natural part of language learning, and they shouldn't stop you from practicing. It's better to try and make mistakes than to avoid speaking or thinking in English altogether. Over time, those mistakes will turn into lessons that help you improve your English skills and get closer to thinking in English naturally.
So, to summarize, practicing speaking, engaging with English content, thinking in English throughout your day, and embracing mistakes will all help you move towards thinking directly in English. Keep practicing, and don't rush the process. It will happen as long as you remain consistent.
That's right. So remember to keep challenging yourself, stay consistent with your practice, and most importantly, enjoy the process. The more you immerse yourself in the language, the more natural it will feel to think in English.
One more important tip is to start labeling things in your environment with their English names. For example, you can label objects around your house with sticky notes that have their English names on them. This helps reinforce your vocabulary and gets your brain used to seeing and thinking in English instead of your native language. Over time, you won't even need to think twice about the English word for something. You'll just know it.
That's a great tip, Jennifer. By physically associating objects with their English names, you're giving your brain a visual reminder. It's like creating a mental connection between the object and the English word. It may seem small, but it's a powerful way to build familiarity with the language and help you stop translating in your mind.
Another exercise is to try and describe things in English without translating from your native language. For example, if you're walking through a park, try to describe the trees, the sky, the people, or the birds in English. Don't worry about the exact words or perfect grammar. Just try to think and speak in English as naturally as possible. Over time, you'll start using more complex sentences and thinking about English even when you're not actively trying.
That's such a useful exercise. Jennifer, the more you describe your surroundings in English, the more your brain will start to form sentences in English without needing to translate. It's also great for expanding your vocabulary because you might need to use new words to describe things in different ways.
And let's not forget about practicing with a partner or language exchange buddy. Speaking with others forces you to think quickly in English. This kind of real-world practice is one of the most effective ways to start thinking in English naturally. Try to have conversations in English, and remember that the goal is communication, not perfection.
Exactly. When you're speaking with someone, don't get too hung up on making everything perfect. The point is to get the message across and to keep practicing. Over time, you'll find that you don't need to translate as much, and you'll start thinking directly in English. This happens because you're focusing on communication rather than individual words.
Lastly, try to avoid focusing too much on grammar rules. While grammar is important, it's the flow of the language that counts the most when trying to think in English. Don't stress over every little mistake. Focus on the meaning of what you want to say and keep the conversation going. The more you practice, the more natural the language will feel.
Right, Jennifer, thinking in English is about feeling comfortable with the flow of the language, not about being perfect. Over time, as you continue practicing and using English in different contexts, your brain will adapt, and thinking in English will start to come more easily and naturally. Keep challenging yourself, and soon you'll notice a big difference in how you process the language.
Another technique you can use is to immerse yourself in English content. For example, watch movies, listen to podcasts, or read books in English. When you expose yourself to English regularly, your brain starts to absorb the language in a natural way. You won't have to translate anymore because your brain will begin processing the language directly, like a native speaker.
That's a great point, Jennifer. Immersing yourself in the language is key to developing fluency. When you hear English spoken in various contexts, your brain picks up on patterns, common phrases, and how sentences are formed. You'll start recognizing words and phrases more quickly, and you won't have to think so hard about what you're hearing or reading.
One method that helps me is journaling in English. Every day, try to write a few sentences or a paragraph about something that happened to you or how you're feeling. This forces your brain to think directly in English, and it's a great way to practice. Plus, the more you write, the better your writing skills become. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes, just keep writing and learning from them.
I love that. Jennifer, writing in English is an excellent way to practice thinking in the language. You don't have to write long essays, just simple daily thoughts and observations. It's important to make it a habit. Over time, you'll notice your writing becoming more natural, and you'll be thinking in English without realizing it.
Another effective strategy is to set small, specific goals. For example, you could set a goal to think in English for 10 minutes a day, focusing on a specific topic like your routine, a hobby, or what you're planning for the day. By doing this consistently, you can gradually increase the time you spend thinking in English, which will help you stop relying on translation.
That's a fantastic approach. Setting clear, achievable goals gives you something to focus on, and it helps measure your progress. It's important to be patient with yourself and to celebrate small successes along the way. The more you challenge yourself, the more your brain will adapt to thinking in English naturally.
Yes, and remember that it's a gradual process. At first, it might feel challenging to think in English, especially when you're trying to avoid translation. But don't get discouraged, keep practicing, and over time, it will become easier. With regular practice and patience, thinking in English will feel natural.
Absolutely. The more you immerse yourself in the language, use it in your daily life, and practice without focusing too much on translation, the quicker you'll start thinking in English. The key is consistency. Keep speaking, listening, reading, and writing in English every day, and soon you'll notice a big improvement.
Another helpful technique is to start thinking in English during everyday activities. For instance, when you're cooking, try to think about the steps in English. Instead of thinking about the ingredients in your native language, say them in English. This small adjustment can help you start thinking in English throughout your day, making the transition easier.
That's a great idea. Jennifer, you can also try describing things around you in English, like objects in your room or things you see when you go outside. This technique helps you train your brain to make associations directly in English. The more you practice, the more natural it will become to think in the language.
Another way to enhance this is by engaging in conversation with native speakers or other learners. Even if it's just a short chat, it pushes your brain to think quickly in English without relying on translation. You'll learn to respond more naturally, and over time, it will become easier to express your thoughts directly in English.
And I think a lot of people are hesitant about making mistakes when speaking in English, but it's important to remember that mistakes are part of the learning process. Don't let the fear of making errors stop you from trying to think in English. The more you practice, the more confident you'll become, and mistakes will start to happen less frequently.
Exactly, Thomas. And to build on that, you can try practicing with yourself. You could have a conversation with yourself in English, or imagine you're explaining something to someone in English. This self-talk technique can be really helpful in forcing your brain to stay in English mode.
Right, it's all about getting comfortable with the language. It's not about speaking perfectly, it's about getting your thoughts out in English. And as you keep doing this, you'll find that you stop thinking about the translation process and start thinking directly in the language.
And don't forget about reading and listening in English. The more you expose yourself to how native speakers use the language, the more you'll start understanding how things are structured. It's like building a foundation for your brain to think in English naturally. Reading books, listening to podcasts, or watching TV shows in English is a great way to pick up on the rhythm and flow of the language.
Absolutely, and the more you surround yourself with English in various forms, the more you'll start feeling comfortable using it without translating. Remember, learning a language is a journey. Keep practicing, stay patient with yourself, and trust that over time you'll become more fluent and more confident in thinking in English.
Another tip I have is to try to immerse yourself in English when you're in a familiar setting. For example, if you're at home, you could switch your phone or computer language to English. This simple change helps your brain associate familiar actions with English vocabulary, reducing the need for translation.
That's such a smart idea, Jennifer. Another great way to make thinking in English more natural is to practice with flashcards. You can write a word in English on one side and try to recall its meaning without translating it back to your native language. Over time, this helps reinforce your brain's ability to connect ideas and words directly in English.
You can also make it a habit to journal in English. Start by writing about your day or even your thoughts and feelings. Don't worry about making mistakes or being perfect. The key is to express yourself in English without stopping to translate every word. It will feel a little awkward at first, but the more you practice, the easier it will get.
I completely agree. When I first started practicing thinking in English, I used to translate everything, and it slowed me down a lot. But once I started thinking in English more naturally, conversations became faster and easier. So even if it feels like a challenge at first, it's totally worth it in the long run.
Absolutely. And remember, thinking in English isn't something that happens overnight. It's a skill that develops over time with consistent practice. But the more you incorporate it into your daily routine, the more second nature it becomes. Keep pushing yourself even when it feels difficult, because that's when you're growing.
And lastly, I think it's essential to stay positive and patient with yourself. Language learning can sometimes feel like a slow process, but every step forward is progress. Be kind to yourself and celebrate the small victories along the way, whether it's having a full conversation in English or simply thinking for a few minutes without switching back to your native language.
Yes, celebrate the small wins. They build up over time and contribute to your overall progress. As you practice more, you'll notice how much more comfortable you feel thinking in English, And that's when you'll really start to see the benefits in your fluency. Keep going, and don't be afraid to challenge yourself along the way. Another effective way to train your mind to think directly in English is by surrounding yourself with English media. This could be through watching movies, TV shows, or listening to podcasts in English. Try to pay attention to how native speakers express themselves and imitate their expressions. It can help you pick up more natural ways of thinking and speaking.
That's a great point, Jennifer, and you can take it a step further by practicing shadowing. Shadowing means repeating what you hear in real time, just like an actor would do with their lines. It's an excellent exercise for improving pronunciation, fluency, and, most importantly, thinking in English. The more you do this, the more automatic English will feel in your mind.
It's also important to expose yourself to a variety of topics in English. Whether it's news, science, or entertainment, hearing a range of vocabulary and sentence structures will make it easier to think in English, no matter what the situation is. It's not just about learning words, but about learning how those words fit together in different contexts.
I agree. For example, when you're at the grocery store or running errands, you can practice thinking about what you're doing or what you're seeing in English. Instead of mentally translating the word apple into your native language, just think apple in English and describe it in your head as you're looking at it. It might seem small, but it makes a big difference.
Exactly. And don't forget to think in full sentences instead of just individual words. Try describing things around you, like the weather, your feelings, or your daily tasks in English. For instance, if you're making coffee, think, "I'm putting the coffee beans in the grinder," rather than just focusing on individual words like coffee or grinder. The more you practice full sentences, the easier it will be to form natural thoughts in English.
Another trick that helped me a lot is to challenge myself by engaging in spontaneous conversations in English. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but the key is not to overthink every word. Focus more on getting your ideas out and expressing yourself clearly, rather than perfect grammar or sentence structure. Over time, you'll become more confident in your ability to think on your feet in English.
That's a great piece of advice, Thomas. And remember, it's okay to make mistakes along the way. Mistakes are just part of the process and a sign that you're actually trying and learning. The goal is to keep practicing and making thinking in English a natural part of your daily life. It's all about consistency and stepping outside your comfort zone.
One more thing I'd add is the power of speaking out loud. Even if you're not in a conversation, speaking to yourself in English can be incredibly helpful. Whether you're walking down the street or sitting at home, try narrating your thoughts in English. For example, if you're cooking, you could say, "Now I'm chopping the onions," or "I need to add salt to the soup." It helps connect the language to your thoughts and makes it easier to switch to English in real conversations.
That's a fantastic tip, Thomas. Another aspect of thinking in English is learning to recognize the context of situations. This means understanding that in some cases, you don't need to translate everything. For instance, when you greet someone with "How are you?" in English, you don't need to translate it into your native language. You simply know the response is something like "I'm good" or "I'm fine." The more you get used to responding naturally, the less you'll need to translate.
Absolutely. And one thing I learned is that focusing on the meaning rather than the exact translation helps too. If you focus too much on translating every single word, you'll slow down your thinking process. Instead, focus on understanding the meaning of the sentence. For example, if you hear someone say, "I'm really looking forward to the weekend," you understand it's about excitement for the weekend, not just the words.
Yes, and that's where language immersion comes in. It's about surrounding yourself with English as much as possible. You don't always have to translate because you start to get used to thinking in that language. It's about making English a part of your environment, not just something you do in class or study time. So, even listening to English music or podcasts can help you immerse yourself in the language naturally.
Right, and it's okay to go slow at first. Just like with any skill, thinking in English will take time, but the more you practice, the more natural it will become. Start with small steps, think in English while doing simple tasks, gradually increase the complexity of what you're thinking about, and always challenge yourself. Keep doing that, and eventually, English will become your default language.
That's a great point, Thomas. To sum it up, training your brain to think in English isn't something that happens overnight. But with practice, patience, and consistency, you'll start to notice real improvements. The key is to keep exposing yourself to English, practicing speaking out loud, and reducing the reliance on translation. Over time, thinking directly in English will become second nature.
Another technique I'd recommend is using visual cues. For instance, when you see an object, immediately think of its name in English. If you're looking at a cup, think this is a cup, not the translation in your native language. It helps strengthen your connection to the language.
That's a great approach, Thomas. Another simple exercise is to label things around your home in English. For example, stick labels on your fridge, door, and mirror with their English names. This constant exposure helps you associate words directly with the items, making translation unnecessary.
Exactly, Jennifer. Also, reading in English is a fantastic way to build thinking in English. When you read books or articles, try not to stop and translate words you don't understand right away. Instead, try to guess the meaning from context and keep moving forward.
Yes, Thomas, this helps you learn to infer meaning, and over time, you'll stop needing to translate everything. It also builds your vocabulary in a more natural way, helping you understand and speak English more fluently without constantly translating in your mind.
One more tip is to practice speaking without worrying about mistakes. The more you speak, the more comfortable you'll get with the language. Just let your thoughts flow in English, even if they're not perfect. This will help you think in English faster.
Absolutely. It's all about building that comfort level. And don't forget to make it fun. Watch English movies, listen to podcasts, or chat with English speakers. The more you engage with the language in different ways, the more you'll start thinking in it naturally.
Another way to enhance your thinking in English is to immerse yourself in English media like podcasts, YouTube videos, and even music. Listen actively and try to understand without relying on subtitles or translations. Over time, your mind will begin to adapt to English thinking more naturally.
Great point, Thomas. Also, try thinking about your daily routine in English. For example, as you go through your morning, narrate your actions in English. I'm brushing my teeth, or I'm getting dressed. This simple habit reinforces your ability to think directly in English during everyday activities.
Exactly, Jennifer. Another tip is to surround yourself with English-speaking people. Join conversations, even casual ones. The more you interact, the quicker your mind will switch to thinking in English. It's all about practicing regularly in real-life situations.
That's right, Thomas. And when you don't have a conversation partner, you can still practice thinking in English by writing a journal or keeping a diary in English. This is another great way to reflect on your day while reinforcing your ability to think in the language.
You know, Jennifer, it's also helpful to use apps or games in English that require you to think quickly. For example, word puzzles or flashcard apps. They challenge your brain to process information in English and help build your vocabulary at the same time.
I couldn't agree more, Thomas. Using apps is a great way to make language learning interactive. The goal is to shift your mindset so that English becomes your default thinking language. Eventually, you'll find that translation won't be necessary and speaking English will feel more natural.
Another effective method is to label objects around your house in English. For instance, you can put labels on the fridge, door, mirror, or chair. This constant exposure to English vocabulary will make it easier for your mind to make connections without translating from your native language.
That's a clever idea, Thomas. Also, It's important not to worry too much about making mistakes. When you're thinking in English, your thoughts might not always be perfect, and that's okay. The goal is to practice without the fear of errors. The more relaxed you are, the easier it becomes to think directly in English.
Exactly. Jennifer, you should focus more on the flow of conversation rather than grammar perfection. Over time, as you practice, you'll start feeling more confident in your ability to express yourself in English without needing to translate your thoughts first.
Yes, and another great way to train your mind is through storytelling. Try retelling your favorite story or event, but in English. Whether it's a movie you watched or an experience you had, thinking about how to explain it in English can improve your fluency and thinking skills.
That's such a fun exercise. Jennifer, you can also challenge yourself by thinking in English while doing things that require focus, like solving a puzzle or cooking a recipe. Try to translate your instructions and thoughts into English as you go through the task.
And let's not forget that consistency is key. Just like learning any new skill, the more you practice thinking in English, the quicker and easier it becomes. Set small goals each day, like describing your surroundings or thoughts in English, and gradually, your ability to think in English will improve.
One more thing to consider is watching English media without subtitles. At first, it may feel a bit difficult, but over time, your brain will start picking up on phrases and expressions naturally. This helps you stop relying on translation and think directly in English during real conversations.
Great point, Thomas. Watching shows or movies in English helps familiarize you with how native speakers express themselves. You'll start recognizing patterns and structures in conversations that will make it easier to think in English in everyday situations.
Absolutely, and let's not forget that practicing with a language partner or tutor can be incredibly helpful. Engaging in conversations in real time forces you to think quickly and practice your language skills without translating, which is perfect for improving fluency.
That's true. Practicing with a native speaker or a fellow learner also gives you a chance to receive immediate feedback, which can help you adjust your thinking process and become more comfortable using English in conversation without overthinking or translating in your mind.
Incorporating English into your daily routine is crucial. Whether it's thinking about what you'll have for lunch or planning your day, try to do it all in English. This constant practice helps to reinforce your ability to think in English, even in simple situations.
Exactly. And as we mentioned before, the key is to make it a habit. The more you practice thinking in English, the more it will become second nature. Over time, you'll find that translating in your head is less of a necessity, and you'll think directly in English without even realizing it.
Another great way to train your mind to think in English is by keeping a journal. You can write about your day, your thoughts, or your goals in English. This practice helps you organize your thoughts in English and makes it easier to express yourself without translation.
That's a fantastic suggestion, Thomas. Writing daily helps you get used to thinking in English while building vocabulary. It's also a great way to reflect on your learning and see your progress over time, making you more confident in using English without needing to translate.
Right, and one more tip is to set small goals for yourself. For example, you could aim to think in English for just 10 minutes a day, then gradually increase the time. This way, you'll ease into the habit of thinking in English without feeling overwhelmed.
Setting small goals is key. By breaking the process into manageable steps, you can track your progress and stay motivated. Don't be too hard on yourself. Every small achievement helps you move closer to thinking in English more naturally.
Also, don't forget to immerse yourself in English environments as much as possible. For example, if you're at a cafe or at home, try thinking about what you see and hear around you in English. This will help you practice thinking in the language in real-life situations.
That's a great point. Immersing yourself in the language whenever possible, even if it's just by naming things around you in English, can really improve your ability to think in the language. The more you expose yourself to English, the easier it becomes to use it naturally in conversation.
Another method to think in English is by using language apps or games. Many apps offer quick exercises that help you think in English while practicing vocabulary, grammar, and phrases. The more interactive and fun, the easier it is to keep up the habit of thinking in the language.
Exactly, Thomas. And it's important to make these practices part of your daily routine. Just like exercising your body, exercising your mind with English will strengthen your skills. The consistency of doing a little bit each day will yield noticeable improvements.
You can also practice with a language partner. If you have a friend who's learning English or is a native speaker, you could challenge each other to only speak in English for a set amount of time. This way, you'll have more opportunities to think in English and have spontaneous conversations.
That's a fantastic suggestion. Having a speaking partner not only helps you think in English, but also boosts your confidence in real conversations. Plus, you'll get immediate feedback, which can help you adjust and learn more quickly, making the process even more enjoyable.
It's also helpful to watch shows or movies in English, especially those with subtitles. Start by reading the subtitles, but then try to understand the context and the meaning without looking at them too much. This helps you naturally connect words and phrases to real-life situations.
That's a really effective strategy, Thomas. Watching content in English without relying too heavily on subtitles forces your brain to start thinking in the language. Over time, you'll find that you can understand more without needing to translate back into your native language.
Another great technique is to describe your surroundings or your day in English. For example, when you're walking outside, try to mentally describe what you see in English. It could be as simple as there's a dog playing in the park or the sky is cloudy today. This helps make English a natural part of your thoughts.
I love that idea, Thomas. It's like turning your mind into a constant language exercise. Even when you're at home or doing simple tasks, narrating in English can gradually help you make the language more automatic. You stop translating and just start thinking in English.
Exactly, and it's not just about simple descriptions. You can also narrate your thoughts or plan your day in English. For instance, instead of thinking I need to buy groceries, try thinking I should go to the store and get some eggs, bread, and vegetables. This method will really reinforce your language skills.
Absolutely. The more you integrate English into your daily routine, the less you'll need to translate. Eventually, thinking in English will become second nature. You'll notice that you can respond faster and with more confidence in conversations.
It's also important to keep practicing speaking, even if it's just to yourself. You can ask questions or give answers in English, like "How was my day?" or "What should I do next?" This helps you form sentences without needing a conversation partner.
Yes, Thomas, speaking to yourself in English is an underrated but powerful technique. It helps you internalize the language and strengthens your ability to think and speak quickly. Plus, it gives you the freedom to practice without feeling self-conscious.
Another great tip is to use English in different contexts, like when you're watching movies or reading books. Pay attention to how the characters speak and try to mirror their phrases. This not only helps with vocabulary, but also with understanding the natural flow of the language.
That's such a helpful way to reinforce learning. It's like learning from real-life examples. Watching content in English helps your brain recognize patterns, so when you're in real-life conversations, those patterns will pop up naturally. You won't have to think as hard.
Exactly, Jennifer. Plus, if you're reading in English, don't just translate unfamiliar words. Try to guess their meaning from the context. Over time, this helps your brain make connections directly in English instead of relying on your first language.
That's a great point, Thomas. And the more you engage with English in a natural, immersive way, whether it's through reading, watching shows, or speaking, the easier it becomes to think in English. It becomes a habit rather than something you need to consciously force.
And remember, making mistakes is part of the process. You might slip into your native language at first, but the key is to practice. With time, you'll notice your brain switching into English more quickly. It's about building that muscle memory for the language.
Absolutely, Thomas. And don't be discouraged if it feels difficult at first. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel. Just like with any skill, it takes time. Keep exposing yourself to English, and eventually, your thinking in English will become effortless.
Another thing that helps is thinking in full sentences rather than individual words. For example, instead of translating a single word like car, try to think in a complete sentence like I need to buy a new car. This helps your brain get used to the flow of real-life conversations.
That's such a smart approach, Thomas. It's like you're practicing forming sentences in real time, which makes your communication smoother. Plus, you'll be able to respond more naturally without needing to pause and translate every single word.
Exactly, Jennifer. Also, it helps to practice describing things in your environment. Whether you're at home, on the bus, or in the park, try to think of how you describe those things in English. This gives you a chance to use practical vocabulary, which can come in handy during conversations.
Great tip! I also recommend speaking aloud as much as possible, even if you're alone. It gets your brain used to forming thoughts in English, and over time, your confidence grows. You'll start finding that English feels more like your natural way of thinking.
Yes, speaking out loud is a great way to strengthen your English skills. Also, if you have a chance, try thinking about the questions people ask you in English conversations. Think about how you would respond before you answer, and you'll find it becomes easier with practice.
And don't forget about keeping a journal in English. Writing about your day or thoughts helps reinforce thinking in English, especially if you start to think of your daily experiences as part of an English narrative. It's a fun and creative way to improve your skills.
Another tip is to immerse yourself in English content, whether it's podcasts, TV shows, or books. The more you hear or read in English, the more your brain will get used to thinking in that language. It's all about surrounding yourself with English as much as possible.
Right, Thomas, immersion is key. It's also helpful to remember that it's okay to make mistakes. The goal isn't perfection, but fluency. As you start thinking more in English, your mistakes will become fewer, and you'll feel more comfortable using the language every day.
Exactly, Jennifer, and when you're trying to think in English, try not to focus too much on grammar rules. The more you think about the rules, the harder it can be to think quickly. Just let the conversation flow, and you'll naturally improve over time.
That's a great point, Thomas. Letting go of the fear of making mistakes allows you to speak more freely. Also, try thinking in English when you're doing daily tasks, like cooking or shopping. It will make English a part of your routine, and you'll see your skills improve gradually.
One more thing that can help is practicing thinking in English with a friend or language partner. It's great to have someone to talk to in English, and it pushes you to think and respond more naturally. Even simple conversations can be incredibly beneficial.
I love that idea. Conversing with a friend or language partner creates a real-life environment where you're forced to think quickly in English. Plus, it's fun. You'll see how much more confident you become when you practice in a relaxed, natural setting.
Another technique is to start thinking about your surroundings in English. For instance, when you're walking down the street, try to describe what you see in English. It doesn't need to be complex, just simple sentences will get your brain used to processing English naturally.
That's a great suggestion, Thomas. You can even try naming objects around your house in English. Labeling things in your environment can help train your mind to associate objects with their English names instead of your native language.
Yes, you can also practice by thinking in full sentences instead of single words. For example, instead of just thinking dog, think the dog is running fast. This helps you build your ability to think in more complete thoughts, which is essential for fluent conversations.
Exactly, and don't forget to give yourself time. It won't happen overnight, but with consistent practice, your ability to think in English will improve. Just like learning a new habit, it requires patience, but it's well worth the effort in the long run.
And it's important to be consistent with these practices. You don't need to dedicate hours every day, just a few minutes each day can make a big difference. Even thinking in English for short periods will help your brain adapt to using the language more fluidly.
Totally, consistency is key. It doesn't have to be stressful. Think of it like a fun challenge. The more you do it, the more natural it will feel. Before you know it, you'll be thinking in English without even realizing it.
Well, that wraps up today's tips on how to start thinking in English instead of translating. Remember, it takes time, but the more you practice, the more natural it will become.
Absolutely, keep challenging yourself, stay consistent, and don't worry about mistakes. It's all part of the process. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time for more English learning tips.
Take care, everyone, and keep thinking in English.